Hello and welcome to Vancouver Carpenter. Today I'm going to teach you how to fix screw pops. So you probably can't see them from that far away, but I have two of them. One here and one here. The first thing you need to understand is how screw pops happen. So there's two things that cause them. The first and most common is shrinkage of lumber. So as a 2x4 shrinks, it causes the screw head to be sticking out about a 32nd of an inch farther than it used to be. And so what that does is it creates a small gap of air between the drywall and the stud. And because of that, it's able to move a little bit independently. And what that does is it pushes that little chunk of mud that's in the screw tip out because it's moving back and forth. The other thing that causes this is also a poorly placed screw. So when somebody puts a screw into the drywall and it goes in too far and tears the paper of the drywall, what that does is it means it can't hold and it can again move independently from the studs. So I'm going to move this in up close and we're going to take a look at these and how to fix them. Okay, so here it is. So the first thing you need to do is pull this screw out. There it is. And yep, the paper is particularly damaged here. We need to cut all this loose paper out first. I have a nice sharp knife and it's cutting it real nicely. So that helps to ensure that a blister doesn't come, because all that loose paper there, if you just go put mud on top of that loose paper, it's going to cause another blister. Next, you need to put another screw about 1.5 inches or 2 away. And you need to be really careful to make sure that it doesn't go in too far. So if you don't have a lot of skills with a drill, you could even stop at that point and twist it the rest of the way in until it's just below the surface. Then you want to make sure it's not clicking. If you can hear it, it's not in far enough. So another thing that's very important is that you use drywall screws only. So drywall screws have a type of head that is called a bugle head. And it's shaped, like a little trumpet or a bugle. This common Robertson screw, on the other hand, has a sort of triangular shaped head instead of rounded. And the reason you need to use a drywall screw is because these are specially designed to not tear the paper. Whereas these, even if you sink it just right, there's still a good risk of it tearing the paper and causing that blister. So let's do this one too. There it is. Again, carve that out. And if you're lucky, you've got a drywall drill. Those do the job for you perfectly. Or if you don't have any tools, you can always do it the good old-fashioned way. There it is. This takes a little time though. Possible. Just takes a little time. Good. So it is a little time consuming carving out these little divots where the old screws were, but I can guarantee you that that blister is not going to come back, and that's better than having to redo it. So when coating the screws, you want to make sure that you use a mud with really good adhesion for your first coat. A lot of quick sets or a finish mud is not going to stick to the screw, and it's really important that you use something, again, with very good adhesion. So I'm using just some 20-minute quick set, and I don't need much. And I'm adding a tiny bit of glue to it to ensure that the first coat sticks. I've got a video on mixing glue in with your mud. You guys can check that out if you're curious about it. Okay, it's nice and mixed up. So when coating a screw for the first coat, you want to put it on in one direction and take it off in another direction. And what that does is it makes sure you don't get a little hole from the X in the screw. So now I'm going to let that set up for the 20 minutes or so that it takes, and I'm going to do a second coat of quick set without the glue. So I've given this enough time to set up. Now, it's actually shrunken into those voids a little bit because I mixed it a tiny bit too thin. And when your quickset's a little bit too thin, that just means there's extra water in it. And the drywall, being so dry, pulls all that water out and your quickset's gonna shrink. So this time for my second coat, I've mixed it much thicker. And now it's time to give these a quick scrape and fill them again. And it's just the same thing. Put it on, take it off. So these are still going to need one more coat of either all-purpose or finish mud because quickset doesn't take paint very nicely. So I'm going to let this set up and do that. Now that the quickset has set up, it's actually not a bad idea to give it a real quick sand just around the edges before I go and put my all-purpose mud on. So the reason I do that is because the tiny little built-up edge that was left can sometimes show through when you sand off the all-purpose and then all of a sudden you have this harder mud underneath. You go and paint it and all of a sudden you can see this ring where you've patched. So now that they've been sanded, I'm going to coat them with some finish mud. And if you can't tell, I'm just basically putting the mud on and taking it off. It's pretty simple. With screws, you want to keep it as flat as possible. Now I'm going to let these dry for a couple days, sand them, and they're ready for paint. So you could do this entire thing with all-purpose mud, keep in mind. You don't have to use quickset. But if you're using all-purpose mud, you need to let each coat dry overnight. So that is my almost dummy-proof method of fixing screw pops. So hopefully with this technique, you can get some nice smooth walls. And even better, have them not show up down the road a year or two later. Because as we know, with screw pops, that's the problem. Everything looks good until you see them in a couple of years. So thanks for watching Vancouver Carpenter. I hope you found this useful. If you want to stay tuned with all the videos I'm putting out, feel free to subscribe. If you found this useful, thumbs up helps. Thanks for watching. Till the next time.